All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. As usual, we have news that is terrible in regards to Republicans and Democrats. Okay, which side are you on? The news' side. Okay, Anna, let's do it.
All right, well, let's begin with the protests that took off over the weekend.
Not the church, not the state, the people must decide.
I'm the people. I'm the people. I am the people. The people have decided, the court has decided. You lose.
There you see a man explaining exactly what the anti-choice movement is all about: power and control over women's bodies.
You have no choice. Not your body, not your choice. Your body is mine.
So the video that you just watched featured a man who is allegedly not part of the New York Fire Department, although he is wearing fire department gear. It's some guy who decided to be provocative while demonstrators are protesting the forthcoming reversal of Roe v. Wade, which means that the constitutional right to an abortion will be overturned. He thought it would be great to specifically say, Cenk, what we already knew the anti-choice movement is all about. It's not about life, it's not about death, it's all about control, and specifically control over women's bodies. He said it clearly. Now, there's some question in regard to who this guy is. There's all sorts of theories online. We can't confirm any of them, so unfortunately we don't have a specific identity as of now. But what are your thoughts on the video that we just watched?
Oh, we got to find out who it is, because we got to get the name to Nancy Pelosi. She's going to want him to be a Democratic candidate. Since she's campaigning for anti-choice candidates, she's going to be thrilled to find this guy. So if you're catching feelings over it, I don't know, go ask her. She's supporting anti-choice Henry Cuellar, who's voted to defund Planned Parenthood, voted with the Republicans on abortion issues, will very likely vote against codifying Roe. So why Nancy Pelosi's helping him? Ask her, ask Clyburn, who's also helping the anti-choice movement. So what does the anti-choice movement think? Yeah, that guy summarized it perfectly. And you're not supposed to say the quiet part out loud, but since he's not a politician, he just said it. Yeah, we just want to control your bodies. We want the government to control your bodies, and not you. But we're on the side of freedom, and Pelosi's on the side of Democrats.
Right. I mean, the Democrats, we have a ton prepared, to get into a discussion about that. But for now, I do want to just quickly discuss the, in my opinion, fairly small protest that took place over the weekend, the outrage that sparked by the right wing, and then more importantly, the message that we're now getting from the White House. Now, there were protesters who gathered outside the home of Justice Brett Kavanaugh. There were other justices who were targeted with these protests. They were relatively small, a dozen people showing up. Some reports say as many as 100 demonstrators showing up, and they're reacting to a pretty serious piece of news that indicates that women will have the rights stripped away from them, the same rights that they've had for the last 50 years. So there is understandable outrage in response to that. Also keep in mind that we're talking about justices who lied during their confirmation hearings when they were specifically asked about the potential reversal of Roe v. Wade. You have Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch saying, again, two senators during their hearings that it's settled law. It's already settled. There's precedent. We're not going to mess with Roe v. Wade. And of course, as we know, thanks to that leaked draft, they are in fact planning on overturning it. Well, what is the response to the demonstrators from the White House? Jen Psaki puts out a statement saying, quote, POTUS, meaning Joe Biden, strongly believes in the constitutional right to protest as long as it's convenient. That part I added, of course. But that should never include violence, threats, or vandalism. Judges perform an incredibly important function in our society, namely a function that strips us of our rights. I added that part myself. And they must be able to do their jobs without concern for their personal safety. Oh, is POTUS and the White House overall concerned about the comfort and the privacy of the elite in this country, the same elite who have put themselves in a position to strip rights away from Americans, namely American women? Oh, are we making them uncomfortable by demonstrating outside of their homes? Is that something that makes them concerned about their privacy? I mean, it's just amazing to me because it shows you that the elite in this country will continue to protect the elite, even as they strip us of our rights over our own bodies, rights that give us agency. And again, the very people who are engaged in that mission to strip us of our rights are also the individuals who couldn't be bothered to wear a mask, which is temporary, which helps prevent the spread of a contagious virus that has already killed hundreds of thousands of Americans, many of whom didn't even need to die. But of course, the right wing is so pro-life that they will happily spread the virus, putting other people in jeopardy, while of course regulating your uterus.
Okay, so obviously there's the irony here of privacy for me, but not for thee. Apparently, I can't wait to see if they're gonna put an addendum to this opinion because it isn't published yet. Now remember, you women out there, you have no right to privacy and the government can snatch up your body anytime they like. But we're gonna say that you're not allowed to protest in front of our homes because we are the elites and we have a right to privacy. Now, look, I've said this a million times on the show. I don't like the protests at the homes. I think that they lead to dangerous situations, etc. But by the way, they put up this giant barrier around the Supreme Court. Well, wait a minute. If we can't protest in front of the Supreme Court, where the hell would we protest? What would be wrong with a protest at the Supreme Court? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, we're not right wingers. Nobody's gonna storm the place chanting about hanging an official. That's the right wing, right? And there's no indication of that. And in terms of hypocrisy here, I'll reiterate a point I made on the first day, and now it's all over social media a week later. Christine Blasey Ford, how about her privacy? They right-wing monsters went to her home over and over and over. She had to keep switching different places she was at. Was everybody just beside themselves in anger over that? No, barely noticed. The right wing loved it. So there's just no end to their goddamn hypocrisy. And as they did all this, and the Biden administration says, "Oh, no, we must protect the elites and the right wing." Okay, fine, no problem. I don't like the home protests anyway. But did it gain you any fans in the right wing? I'm sure that they say, "Oh, well, now Biden's moderate because he's looking to protect them." No, of course not. Instead of Fox News host Steve Hilton turned around and said Biden is a fascist because he's threatening the lives of the Supreme Court justices.
Yeah, so in fact, why don't we go to that video? Because I want you to see how insane his argument is. And this is, you know what? The Biden administration deserves it. They deserve it because they cower to the extremists in the right wing over and over again, thinking that they're gonna get cookies for it, but they get slapped down over and over again because guess what? The right wing understands politics. Whereas the Democratic Party, I mean, they just love the right wing making them their bitches. They love it. So here's Steve Hilton doing just that.
Oh, you see fascism down the line, do you? It is already here. Thanks to your guy. They talk about fascism. Jen Psaki was asked what Biden thinks about Supreme Court justices being targets for potential violence in the wake of the leaked ruling.
So he doesn't care if they're protesting outside the Supreme Court or outside someone's private residence.
I don't have an official US government position on where people protest.
No official government position on where people protest. These protests outside John Roberts' house, outside Brett Kavanaugh's house, they're against the law. But the Biden regime has no position on it. Biden has still not condemned it. He wants this. Biden wants rule by the mob, not the rule of law. This is not the behavior of a man who's fit to be the leader of the free world. He promised to be a unifying healer and ended up an authoritarian demagogue.
An authoritarian demagogue. Now, we read you the tweet from Jen Psaki. They're urging demonstrators to please be polite. Your rights will be stripped away from you and we'll do nothing to stop it. But please be polite to the very individuals who have stripped those rights from you. And remember, you're hearing from someone who works on the same network that has minimized what happened on January 6th, okay? Where you have a giant group of rioters storming the Capitol because they didn't like the outcome of our democratic process. They didn't like the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. If you need visuals to help you understand how outlandishly stupid Steve Hilton's argument is here, I can remind you of what January 6th looked like. Let's take a look at what real mob rule looks like.
Multiple capital injuries.
So let's not get it twisted about the double standard that we're seeing from right-wing commentators like Steve Hilton, okay? Right-wing extremists engaging in mob rule, engaging in riots, engaging in forms of intimidation, coercion, whatever it is, hunky-dory, they're doing nothing wrong. In fact, it's the equivalent of going on a friendly little tour in the nation's capital. But when it comes to people who are enraged, they're feeling justified rage because they will no longer have agency over their own rights. Couple dozen of them get together in front of Brett Kavanaugh's house. Oh my God, this is fascism, this is fascism. And you know who falls for it? The Democrats, the White House, Biden with his impotent, weak, pathetic leadership. That's what we see. That is what is really happening and transpiring in front of us right now.
So Steve Hilton has been on this show and I know him a little bit because of that. And I know that he's actually a really bright guy. So there's no way.
Come on, Cenk.
No, hold on. Listen to what I'm saying. There's no way that he believes that stuff. I guarantee you that he thinks his audience is a bunch of dupes, and he could feed them any lie and get away with it. I mean, he just talked about rule by mob. He knows his audience loves the mob, and he said authoritarian, threatening lives. His audience that loves the January 6th mob, that mob was literally chanting, "Hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence." They were calling for murder of their own vice president. Steve Hilton, Fox News, has no problem with that. You dare to protest us taking away the freedom of all women in the country and having the jackbooted thugs of the government control their bodies? How dare you? You're authoritarian and fascist. Look, it's a massive trolling operation. He's rubbing it in the Democrats' faces. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how much you surrender to us. We're still gonna call you fascist and authoritarian. Why? Number one, we're gonna take the power of that word away. So when my fascist friends actually do a violent takeover of the government, well, we smeared everybody as fascist so no one can tell. And besides which, he's correctly deduced that the Democrats are bitches. And all you have to do is slap them across the face, okay? And I don't, and I just want to be clear about it, obviously, proverbially. Although with the Republicans, they might literally do it. And Biden might be like, oh, thank you, sir. Oh God, that feels so good for a Republican to acknowledge me and to have contact with me. So, and now you say, hey, Cenk, that's too much. Come on, you can't say that. Biden wouldn't give in to Steve Hilton, but wait a minute, he did. The statement from Psaki was after the Fox News segment. Biden said, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll kiss your ass, Steve Hilton. I'll kiss your ass, Fox News. No, idiot Biden. You're supposed to be fighting them. You're supposed to be fighting them, not kissing their ass. And you kissed it and did it help? They called you a fascist anyway. You're never gonna understand this game. Biden is frozen in amber. He's 280 years old and he's like, I remember when we were bipartisan in the 1600s. Well, I really liked the Federalists and the Whigs and all those folks, okay? And the Bull Moose Party. You moron. Every time they see your weakness, they actually pound pounce on it and make it 10 times worse. And every time, like an idiot, you go out there and apologize to them and give them what they want. You're supposed to be fighting for us. But we're the only people saying it. The rest of the mainstream media is telling everybody how brave and strong the Democrats are and how they're gonna fight against this decision. They're not fighting anything. They've already surrendered.
They've already surrendered. In fact, when we come back from the break, we'll get to Pelosi and explain how, while on one hand, she's trying to present herself as a warrior for women's reproductive rights, in reality, behind the scenes, she has not only given up, she has empowered the anti-choice movement. We'll tell you how. Come right back.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, and also Wendy Bayol. She just joined. We appreciate it. That's on YouTube by hitting the join button below. I'm going to read one comment from YouTube Super Chat. Brick House Mama 98 said, "My cousin was one of the Capitol police officers there on January 6th and struggles with it daily. The vigils I've seen at the homes don't come close." That's obviously true unless you're a host on Fox News or the president of the United States pretending to support Democrats. Okay, Anna.
All right, let's get to our next story.
Back when Democrats held majorities in the House and the Senate, 2009, when you were Speaker, President Obama was asked about codifying Roe versus Wade and said abortion's a moral and ethical issue and, quote, not the highest legislative priority. Do you think it was a mistake for him, for other presidents, not to push harder when Democrats had the majority?
If I just may.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who notoriously stated that America needs strong Republicans, is looking for a way to weasel her way out of the fact that Democrats are weak and ineffective.
The focus we have right now is an urgent one in order to try to improve this, what we're calling it, fake or draft decision, whatever it is. I think that this is a waste of time. The fact is, in 2009, we really did not have a pro-choice Democratic Party. I had to fight against some of the people who did not want to pass the Affordable Care Act because they were concerned that it might enable more freedom of choice. It really didn't go down that path.
I don't think that question is a waste of time. I think it's important for Democrats to learn from their own history and to learn from their own failures. And for her to specifically cite that Congress didn't have enough pro-choice Democrats is honestly not something I'm willing to buy. Democrats had a super majority in the beginning of Obama's administration. And I would venture to say, considering how harshly the Democratic Party, the establishment Democratic Party, fights against progressive lawmakers, I'm pretty sure they could have found the ability to sway some of the more conservative elements of their party. But if we're to take Pelosi's statement there at face value, if we're to just believe what she's saying, wouldn't she be against supporting anti-choice Democrats today? But that's not what's going on. Nancy Pelosi is strongly endorsing a conservative Democrat in Texas named Henry Cuellar, who was the only no vote on a House bill that would codify reproductive rights for women. So she's full of it. And I love how salty she gets the second someone tries to point to the failures of the Democratic Party and its leadership. Fact of the matter is, Margaret Brennan is not gonna do a decent job in saying exactly what needs to be said. So we'll say it here. Nancy Pelosi, along with the Democratic Party, has failed the American people. They failed their base, they failed their voters, they failed the people who have done the hard work on the ground to get out the vote. They have failed their small dollar donors. They are failures. When you look at a photo of Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or anyone else in Democratic leadership, you need to understand that they failed you. They will continue to fail you, and they will be furious with you if you point that out. But this is supposed to be a country that is democratic. We get to decide whether or not our elected leaders are representing our best interests. they're not representing our best interests. And I find it hilarious that she thinks that she's entitled to a round of applause, even though she has failed us in the past, she is failing us in the present, and she will certainly fail us in the future. That is the Democratic Party brand.
Okay, so it's amazing that she said, well, we just didn't have enough pro-choice Democrats at the time. That is almost certainly a lie. They had huge majorities. But okay, let's take it at face value, okay? Because I know everybody in Washington says, you can't say that about the speaker. You have to just kiss her ass and assume everything she says is gold and printed and never fact check it, okay? But okay, let's be Washington media and assume that she's telling the truth. Not enough pro-choice Democrats. The obvious follow-up question is, then why are you in the middle of campaigning right now for an anti-choice Democrat? I mean, it's the most obvious question of all time. Obviously, it didn't get asked. That's mainstream media. I mean, I asked my friends today who mainly watch mainstream media from back in the day. Most of them have never heard that Nancy Pelosi's fighting tooth and nail for an anti-choice legislator. He could break the tie with the Republicans and make sure that Roe's never codified. And she's dying to get him in. And later, when she loses the vote, she'll say, well, I didn't have enough pro-choice Democrats. But wait a minute, you're doing that right now. We're not talking about 2009, you're doing it right now. Why? On the other hand, Cuellar is also being investigated by the FBI. Wait, what? And is way more likely to lose the general election. So what's the catch? If you're a normie, if you're new and you just came out of like watching only MSNBC and CNN, you'd be like, this is such strange things. I've never heard this on cable news. Why would she be doing that? Well, Cuellar's running against Jessica Cisneros, who's a progressive. And Pelosi and Democratic leadership despise progressives because they're not corrupted. They're like, they're embarrassing us. We're supposed to take hordes of cash like Cuellar did, sometimes illegally, stuff it into our pockets and use it to accrue power. And the problem is that if we ever do anything for our constituents, then we can't find a good reason to fundraise off of them. So, this is, now that Roe is going to be overturned, Pelosi's probably ecstatic. She's gonna raise gobs of money from this, and she knows they're never gonna fix it. So she thinks, oh my God, I'm gonna raise money off of this for the next decade. You think she's not gonna be around? She's gonna be around. Okay, so, and the queen in Washington, Pelosi, is to never be criticized. So, whenever I do criticize her, the people like literally jump out of their seats. It happened at a panel in Politicon. David Frum, the loser who did so many losing presidential candidate campaigns, jumped out of his seat and said, how dare you? You have besmirched the reputation of Nancy Pelosi. She has passed so many things. I said, okay, great. We're on the panel together. It's all on tape. What did she pass? She passed Obamacare. Obamacare was written by a right-wing think tank, Heritage Foundation, mandates that you buy from private health insurance companies who donated to Obama and the rest of them, and especially the author of the bill, Max Baucus, and was originally championed by Mitt Romney. That's the only thing. I said, okay, good. Look, we can debate whether that was an important piece of right-wing legislation to pass or not. But give me one other thing she's passed. I mean, she's had like 20, 30, 40, 50 years. What has she passed? She couldn't even pass Roe with a codifying Roe with a supermajority because she doesn't want to pass it. Neither did Obama, neither does Biden. All they care about is money, money, power, me. They're screwing you on purpose for their own power. That's who Nancy Pelosi is. Don't believe any of the liars in mainstream media who are currently all covering for her. Look, just one last thing on this. If Donald Trump this week had come out and said, you know what, I'm gonna be for a candidate that's pro-choice. He believes in the right to abortion and I'm endorsing him. What do you think would happen? You all know it. Even if you were brainwashed to the end of time by New York Times and thinking Democrats care about you, you all know what would happen. There'd be headlines everywhere. Donald Trump endorses pro-abortion candidate. Oh my God, what a hypocrisy, unbelievable, right? Pelosi does it, Clyburn does it. They're like, no, shh. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone, because if you tell people, then they'll know that Pelosi's a fraud and doesn't mean anything she says. Shh. That would be reporting. It wouldn't be marketing for corporate Democrats. That's why almost no reporters doing it. By the way, I always give credit where credit is due. NBC News, of all people, had an article about this. So I'll give them credit, everyone else. Shh. That's the queen. That's the queen. We all lie for her.
have been noticeably furious with our show. I've noticed that even Majority Report's been getting some criticism because of the, I would argue, incredibly constructive feedback that we have for Democratic leadership. And the question I have for those people who are so hyper-focused on angry at Republicans, which I understand, I hate Republicans too. Can't stand them. They're the ones who are fighting to strip our rights away from us. But our line of defense had a line of offense, but we have a line of defense, right, supposedly, and that's the Democratic Party. And they're failing. What do you want us to do? You want us to give them a pat on the back and enable their failures?
Yes, that's what they want.
Congratulate them on failing us? Okay, I'm not interested in that. So if you're watching the show and you want to see a bunch of hosts who tell you pretty little lies so you can feel good about yourself, you're watching the wrong show. They have failed you. It's done, it's over, they failed you. For me, this issue was the final issue. It's the nail in the coffin for Democratic leadership for me. Over, it's done, okay? I'm not interested in enabling them. They've had way too many chances, and you're absolutely right, Cenk. They see this not as a tragedy in the country, not as a tragedy for all the women who are likely going to die because they're still gonna try to get an abortion, likely an illegal abortion, an abortion that might even kill them. They don't see that as they see this as a moment of celebration. They're not saying it to you, but their actions would prove otherwise.
Look, guys.
They're out there shilling for, hold on, I'm not done. Shilling for Henry Cuellar, okay? And then they're also doing what? Collecting the bucks, buku bucks. This is great. It's all about the fundraising for them. It has been about the money and nothing more ever since the Supreme Court opened the floodgates and allowed unlimited campaign contributions into the coffers of our politicians, yes, including the Democratic Party. Ever since that happened, the Democratic Party has quickly morphed into the Republican Party substantively. Rhetorically, they're a little different, rhetorically. But I would ask you, when it comes to substantive, when it comes to bread and butter issues, that's really that different from the Republican Party. I mean, it's amazing how they're getting pats on the back as we speak, because look at the wonderful bipartisan way in which Congress has allocated billions of dollars in military spending for Ukraine. Isn't it so wonderful? Yeah, it's because they have the same defense contractor donors, you idiots. That's why.
Okay, so first of all, when they are theoretically on our side rhetorically, as Anna pointed out, which some Democrats brag about, like, hey, we say the right words. Well, that's just marketing. Your votes and what you pass and don't pass are the only thing that matters. Like, hey, we have good marketing for our lies is not a winning campaign slogan. Although it is in Washington. They think, oh, they're so good at lying. Give them A pluses, give them A pluses. Oh, and they raise so much money. They're so credible, right? If you're good at lying, you're credible in Washington. It's just incredible. All right, but I want to go to Chuck Schumer real quick, guys. So Chuck Schumer, right now there's good progressive groups. They mean well. They're trying to pressure Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski to override the filibuster, because if the two Republicans join the Democrats, you won't even need Manchin or even necessarily Sinema, and get rid of the filibuster and actually codify Roe. It's actually doable, right? Chuck Schumer isn't going to even bring that up for a vote. So what are we wasting our time for? Why are you pressuring Murkowski and Collins on a vote that isn't even going to happen because Chuck Schumer decided he didn't want to embarrass Manchin and Sinema? That protecting his corrupt colleagues was more important than protecting women's rights. So for the Democratic cheerleaders in the audience who say, like, if you just cheer louder for the Democrats and Pelosi and Schumer and Biden, we'll win. How would we win? He's not even going to introduce the vote. We have absolutely no chance of winning. Is that because I didn't cheer loud enough for Schumer? Or is that because Schumer decided he's not going to have the vote? What are you on me for? What do you go ask Schumer for the vote? No, your idea is, no, don't ask Schumer for the vote. Cheerlead him not even voting on this issue and giving up preemptively. How would that help you codify Roe so we could have choice in this country? You're agreeing to give up your rights because a Democrat is doing it? Look, man, you'll never be able to explain that to anybody. The only reason that any actual human being believes that is because, man, their brain has been thoroughly washed by mainstream media. It doesn't matter how much the Democrats screw you. It doesn't matter that they never pass any bills. It doesn't matter that they lie in every campaign. And it doesn't matter that they do the same exact thing as Republicans. You have to support the Democrats. Well, okay, to each his own, but it's our policy funeral. None of our policies are ever gonna pass. Super last thing. Look, you can tell who's right and who's wrong. If you're one of those skeptical, the Democrats. Did it work? Did it work? Did it pass? Okay, you just want to cheer louder and you want us to do propaganda and lies on their behalf? Okay, just think about this, guys. I said that $15 minimum wage wouldn't pass because the Democrats don't actually want it. Everybody in Washington said that it was scandalous, it was an outrageous claim. Pelosi, Schumer, Biden, they all said it's easily going to pass. It didn't pass. You know why? Not just the Republicans. 8, not 2, 8 Democrats voted against it in the Senate. They never intended to pass it. They knew they didn't have the votes and that their Democratic colleagues were going to join the Republicans in making sure that you had lower wages. I was right. Everyone in Washington was wrong. And by the way, if you say, oh yeah, you cherry picked, whatever excuse you make for failures, okay, then I'll tell you in the future, okay? I'll tell you right now. There's a 0% chance they're gonna codify Roe. They're not even gonna try. So but please do your own research. See if Chuck Schumer calls the filibuster vote. Then you'll know, who was right? Were we right? Or were we wrong? And if we had just kissed Schumer and Pelosi's ass more, that they somehow would have miraculously won without a vote. There are verifiable facts in the world. So a lot of you have gotten free and broken of those chains, but a lot of you live in a completely alternate reality, just like the Trump supporters, and you don't even know it. Just like the right wing doesn't realize they've been brainwashed. Look into actual facts. They're not even going to vote on it. The whole thing is theater. Everyone, including the so-called reporters, are lying to you. They'll tell you that they're not gonna vote on it, but all the headlines are Democrats fight hard. Democrats are unbelievable, they're pro-choice, while they're actually campaigning for an anti-choice candidate. The lies are unreal.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break and we'll be back with more news.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Anna's got more.
Let's do it.
My only question is, going back to Schumer, why don't you get a bipartisan vote? This is what Democrats don't understand. They don't understand. So you can't get 100% of what you want. You can't get 80% of what you want. Maybe get 60% of what you want so you can say.
Joe Scarborough is about to give Democrats a losing strategy, which they've already tried and have lost with repeatedly.
We have a bipartisan bill, right? It's just like the Electoral Count Act, which desperately needs to be passed. Democratic leaders, no, we're not going to do it because we can't get the whole loaf. It's time these people wake up. Take the wins you can get. And if you got a bipartisan bill on abortion rights, you take it, even if it's 60% of what you want. Because then you can say, we have a bipartisan group of senators, a bipartisan majority saying that what the Supreme Court's thinking about doing is wrong.
MSNBC's Joe Scarborough, along with other, I guess, Democrat-leaning political pundits, happen to be some of the dumbest people I have ever encountered in this space. And I mean that with my whole being. Because this guy there in his air-conditioned fancy studio, completely oblivious to the fact that we're dealing with a right wing in America that not only wants to ban women's reproductive rights, their right to an abortion, but they don't even want to make an exception in most cases when it comes to incest, when it comes to rape. wants to Democrats a bipartisan bill, at least some reproductive rights protected. Is he living in the same country? Apparently not. Apparently I don't know if he's on drugs when he does the show. I don't know if he's just super lazy and doesn't bother paying attention to what's happening in Congress. But I want to remind him of just one short video featuring Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, and what he said is on his agenda during the Biden administration. Let's watch that.
100% of my focus is on stopping this new administration.
100% of my focus is stopping Joe Biden's administration, meaning serving as an obstructionist, as he did during the Obama years, to anything the Democratic Party wants to do today. That is a video from 2021. I know Joe Scarborough covered it. Is he stupid? Did he forget? Does he genuinely think that Democrats moving further to the right to appease the American Taliban in this country is somehow going to translate into women regaining their reproductive rights? Is that really what he thinks? Because I don't believe that he actually thinks that. And if he does, he is genuinely one of the dumbest people on television.
Well, I have other reasons why he's dumb too, but he's mainly disingenuous, in my opinion. So first of all, he says take the win. But wait, Joe, which win? Because the bill you're referring to, even if you compromise with Murkowski and Collins, only gets to 52 votes. And they're not willing to overturn the filibuster. In fact, Chuck Schumer's not even gonna vote on it. So that has no chance of passage, zero. That's not a conjecture. That is just a fact of legislative procedure. And Joe Scarborough does know that. So what win are you referring to? If you said, hey, they're gonna codify Roe, but there's gonna be some provisions you don't like, and so take the 60%, I would seriously consider that, because then at least we would guarantee abortion rights in the country, most importantly, protect the right of women to make the choice, and maybe there's some painful compromise. But there is no such bill. And it has no chance of passing. So what do you, honestly, if you're not a liar, Joe Scarborough, what are you referring to? And so my guess is he'll fall back on, well, it's true, it won't pass and it won't change anything, but it'll give the appearance of bipartisanship. And how would that help? Because they think, oh no, because the American people love things that are bipartisan. Do they? Do you think the MAGA crowd would be like, oh, the Republicans worked with Democrats, that was bipartisan. Oh, I really like that, I will now vote for them. No, if the Republicans ever worked with Democrats, MAGA would rip their heads off. That's why Mitch McConnell says, oh no, we will never work with Democrats. You don't know that phenomenon? Who's rewarding bipartisanship? No, you're talking about the 1990s where you guys would pass out, because he was in Congress as a Republican, you guys would pass all these bills, including, by the way, all the way through the Trump era, where they would do tax cuts for the rich and they would call it bipartisan. And then the media, like Scarborough, would then come out and do propaganda and go, oh, look, everybody agrees that the rich should get more. Everybody agrees, it's bipartisan. In this case and in this world, bipartisan doesn't help you at all. But it does, but this is important, guys, but it would help Murkowski and Collins, who are Republicans, pretend they're pro-choice while knowing that the bill's never gonna pass. So in fact, Joe Scarborough, who is a Republican, but now is on MSNBC, so he's considered left wing. In Washington, they're jokes, right? He says, help my Republican friends do marketing. No, Joe, we're not gonna do that. But don't worry, Joe, no, none of the Democrats in Washington are gonna listen to us anyway, okay? They hate progressives, they'll love what you said. Oh, help the Republicans do marketing and not actually pass anything? They're like, oh, why didn't somebody tell us this before? They're gonna love your idea. In fact, they're actually in the middle of doing it right now, so I don't know what you're yelling and screaming about. And lastly, on all the idea of, oh, you guys, progressives just want the whole loaf, they're so unreasonable and practical. That is one of the top brainwashing methods that mainstream media uses to make sure they protect corporate Democrats in Democratic primaries. So I ask you, Joe, where's the 60% on child tax credit, on paid family leave, on lower drug prices, on minimum, on any
voting
topic?
rights.
Voting rights.
Voting rights. Where are the voting rights? Where are they? Where's police reform? Where's all of that?
None of it. There's no 60%. There's no middling proposal. There's none of it, okay? So the only thing that has some counter proposal was they said out of the thousands of drugs that are in the country that are all like killing us because we can't afford it, like literally killing us, the corporate Democrats proposed that they would limit prices on 5 of them. 5 out of thousands. Why? Because those 5 are unimportant and it's marketing. So then Joe Scarborough can come back out and go, bipartisan agreement is amazing. Amazing, the prices are lower now on drugs. For 5 drugs, but not the thousands of others. Okay, so is that the 60% you're referring to, Joe lying Scarborough? By the way, that bitch, when I was on MSNBC, cried to mommy and asked the head of MSNBC to get me to stop criticizing him because his feelings were hurt.
Oh, poor Joe Scarborough. Oh, you go whine to mommy and daddy. Was Cenk being very mean to you?
I was in the middle of lying when Cenk said things that were true. Cenk's not allowed to say things that are true. This is corporate media. Why did you let him say things that are true? He ruined my lie.
Thing for Joe Scarborough, a former Republican member of Congress, to give unsolicited advice to the Democratic Party. But it's something entirely different for the Democratic Party to take that advice. And I just want to note, they have taken that advice, and it wasn't today, it wasn't yesterday. They've been using that strategy time now, regardless of what their own voters want, regardless of what their base wants. And the reason why they do it, it always goes back to the money. They'll give you all sorts of excuses. They'll talk about the parliamentarian. They'll talk about the filibuster. They'll talk about, it's the moderates in our party. What could we do? But there's always a convenient excuse to help provide cover for the fact that they just happen to share the same corporate donors as the Republican Party. That's it. They're all friends. Same mutuals. That is priority number 1 for the Democratic Party. And for anyone who thinks, well, I don't know, maybe it's just that the Democrats are weak, maybe they're a little spineless and maybe we need to give them a little more confidence, a little more courage. Oh, no. They're not weak and they're not spineless. And we've seen the way that they're able to fight and play politics when it comes to progressives within their ranks. So we know that they have the capability to fight. It's just that they'll never fight unless it's someone who's going against their corporate donors.
Okay, to give you a perfect sense of that last point here, Joe Scarborough certainly stopped being a Republican. I believe he switched to being a Democrat during the Trump years. Do you know how many of his positions he changed? None, because they're the same positions, whether you're a corporate Republican or a corporate Democrat. Okay, so then you tell me, how's the Democratic Party any different than the Republican Party? The whole thing's a joke, man. And they pay people like Scarborough a lot of money to do marketing on their behalf. Not the actual news, not anywhere near it. No facts at all. Okay, we gotta take another break here. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we have more amazing stories for you guys, including, by the way, Trump thinking about turning on Cawthorn. And you're gonna love the reason why he's considering turning on Cawthorn. We'll be back. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.